A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
On December 15th, 1791, the United States passed the Bill of Rights. Little did they know that many of those amendments would still be debated over 200 years later, specifically the Second Amendment.
42% of Americans own a gun, and an estimated 283 million guns are owned by the American people. With such a large number of firearms being owned, it is clear that this amendment is important to the American people. The United States is the only modern democracy that has the constitutional right to bear arms. But why?
And there are occasions in American life one issue kind of galvanizes the country. And it seems to me that as we begin this year, that guns, violence, and their place in American lives have suddenly electrified the country.
Okay, so first question, why do you think the founders thought it was necessary to add the Second Amendment to the Constitution?
I think if you go back to English colonies or in England, they were living through that tyrannical time. So I think the king had already come over here and tried to take the weapons away from some of the colonies that were here. I think that as Britons, they felt that was their right. They were used to having that freedom. They wanted to have that freedom here. And as he came over and started trying to take their weapons away from them, I think they felt that it was necessary to put something in there to know that would never happen. They felt they had the right to bear arms for, not necessarily for militia, but just for their own protection and self-defense. So I think that's why they thought it was important to put in there.
Do you think the founders' reasoning for adding the Second Amendment is still applicable today? Why or why not?
Absolutely. I don't think we need it as much for militia. We have a good armed forces that protect us, but I think that we still want to have that right for self-defense and protection of our homes. I know that in the state we pass a castle doctrine so that nobody can come in and harm you, that you want to feel safe in your home. And I think that's what most people want to do, and I think that we want to make sure we have a right to defend ourselves.
Why do you think the Second Amendment is important to you and to Americans today?
I think the Second Amendment is a large part of our national identity. I think we have a lot of other countries where they don't have the rights that we have here, and I think the right to bear arms is something that we find very important for us. So again, I think that's one of the reasons we kept it and we fight so hard to keep it. And I think in this area especially, we have a large sportsman's contingent. So they want to go hunting, they want to have their guns, and I think if they're law-abiding citizens, then they should be allowed to do that.
Do you think restricting gun ownership is the best way to go around decreasing gun violence?
Restricting as far as making sure criminals don't have guns, that's why we do background checks. So, if there's a reason you shouldn't have a gun, then you shouldn't have one. But I don't think we should have it so enforced that law-abiding citizens can't have what they want to have. I think that's all part of the right with the Second Amendment, so that they can have their arms.
Do you think we can create gun legislation to decrease violence without infringing on others' rights to own a gun?
Well, that's an interesting question. I do, but I think that we have to look upon reducing the violence without infringing on the rights. So, you always hear the cliche, if it's illegal to have guns, then only the criminals will have them. So as a law-abiding citizen, if I give up my rights, they're going to get them. Criminals are going to have them one way or another. So again, I think that's part of what we need. I think education's important. And I think back years ago, probably in my day, there were rifle clubs in school, and you could boys would come to school with their shotgun in the back of their car because they would go hunting after school, or they would, whatever. As long as the parents taught them to use the gun safely and know when it was, how to handle them, I think that was important. But, I think we see a whole different society. So we certainly don't want to suggest anyone take guns to school now because we see what happens with that. But I think you still have that right, and you need to make sure that the law-abiding citizens have their guns, keep them locked up, know that no one is going to get them that shouldn't have them. And I think that, we have to look at it that way in educating. I don't know if you're ever going to stop violence. You're going to have it whether we have guns or not. Somebody's going to find a way.
All right. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to say that you think would be helpful to our project?
Yeah, I was just thinking about something before, and then it again came in and out of my mind. So, again, I just think it's part of the right, and I think our forefathers were pretty smart when they did our Constitution and knew what was important to them, what our founding principles were. They talk a lot about having a constitutional convention to change different parts of the Constitution. I think we have to be very careful when we do that. I think when you look at the world around us, like I said, we have a good military, we have a good defense team that's protecting us, but you hear all these different groups that come in and want to hurt us. So I don't think it hurts to have a well-armed citizenship that can protect themselves if something does happen. We certainly don't want to be taken over by anyone else. So it's important, and I think if you want to own a gun, you should. If legally, if you can go through the background checks and you can legally own a gun, that's your right, and you can protect yourself. I just want to make sure it doesn't get in the hands of someone who doesn't.
Great.
The police can't be everywhere all the time. And that's one reason why in my state and around the country we believe that citizens ought to be able to defend themselves under appropriate circumstances.